Well, chat, I don't know what's going on. YouTube is acting weird, but that's okay because tonight we're going to be hanging out for a while, chatting about comics. Now, the mainstream comic book industry has obviously lost a lot of customers over the past few years, and instead of giving up on one of our favorite hobbies, people have followed creators who have left the Marvels and DCs to start something of their own and not be worried with each day that passes that they'll be canceled by the very company they work for. And that leads me to the two guests that I have on tonight, Andy Smith and Dennis Turner.
Hi.
Hello.
Thanks for having us.
Of course, of course. So, how are you guys doing?
Doing good. Doing good.
Yeah, it's a great Wednesday. It's New Comic Book Day. Went down, picked up
Yeah.
my new comics, got my little stack. I got them in the database. So they're all set to do the quick flips and read them this week.
Man, it's been
There you go.
years since I had passion for New Comic Book Day. That makes me sad a little bit.
Oh,
Oh,
you don't
it's
have passions anymore?
New comics, especially mainstream ones, they're rough. It's not in the best of shape.
for guys like Dennis and I who've been collecting for so long and stuff. I was going to the comic shop, I believe in the 80s when I went. It was New Comic Day, was a Friday, and I would just go every Friday. Then it moved, and I can't even remember the days because it moved all around. Now it's Wednesday,
Yeah.
and Dennis still gets more than I do. I get maybe one or two books a week.
Yeah.
It's really not mainstream stuff. Like today, Conan from Titan came out, and they're doing a great job with it. So I got
Yeah.
that. And Skybound, who took over GI Joe and Transformers and those properties, are doing a really good job. So I get that stuff too. But it's so baked in, at least for me, that it's like this is when I go every Wednesday, that I'll look to see what's coming out,
Right.
and know, like, I'll look at the list and be like, there's nothing. I'm not
Yeah.
literally getting anything new. I will still go and back issue dive to find something just so I can say I bought something on that day.
Yeah.
You can see my list for today, so you can kind of go through it. You don't see a Marvel or a DC
No.
in the entire list. It's
No.
all independents. And there's another group. This one's from Distillery. They're a small group. It's kind of like, think of Image Comics, where a whole group of creators said, yeah, we don't like what's going on. So they all formed their group, and they are all making them. The difference is they're in the much larger magazine size, which is a cool format, but it's a lot pricier. But anyway,
Yeah.
there's a lot of great indie books that are out there. I try and support a lot of the small presses and stuff like that.
Oh, yeah,
Black
totally.
Box and Scout Comics and Ablaze and, Titan. All of these guys are trying to buck the DC Marvel trend, and they're doing a good job of trying to bring them out. So I will support them. But honestly, most of my money now goes, because I was $150 a week guy, which was the bulk of it was Marvel.
Yeah.
And I get none.
That's a chunk of change, that's for sure.
Yeah, it
Yeah.
is.
I got a
Yeah.
good collection, but I'll just say that he was very sad when I walked in, and the shop owner, I'm like, well, I got good news or bad news. I'm an X-Men guy, have been my entire life. Own them all up until a couple of years ago. I've got all the X runs, X Factor, X Force, New Mutants, etc. And I walked in and I go, good news and bad news. He goes, uh-oh, what's the bad news? Canceling all my Marvel and DC. And he goes, you are not canceling X-Men. Because like even on our channel, the people are like, Dennis will never cancel X-Men. They crossed my red line. I canceled them. And he goes, so where's my good news? And I said,
Right.
I will be substituting some of that by getting independent books. So he literally gives me the previews book whenever they come out. I take it home. I spend the time and flip through it page by page. I'm like, oh, this looks cool. This looks cool. Never heard of a lot of these, and I'll try them.
Yeah, no. I mean, I definitely I definitely get it. I used to purchase a lot of comics because over, the years I've definitely collected my fair share of comics, especially
Sure.
when I was younger. But recently I just feel uninspired by, the DCs and the Marvels.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, the mainstream industry is just not in the best place. And I always say, I'd love it if they'd turn it around. I'd love if every company in the video game industry and Hollywood and comics changed it around, but I just don't see that happening, unfortunately, for a lot of the companies, the majority of them.
Now they're
Yeah.
doubling down.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that is definitely sad.
Yeah, it is sad.
Yeah. But why don't you guys introduce yourselves to those who may not know who you are?
Okay. Andy Smith here, 33-year veteran of the comic book industry. I started working in 1991 for DC Comics and Marvel, Image, Valiant, Acclaim, just, whatever, whoever would hire me, gun pencil for hire, if you will. Wrote a couple how to draw books, Drawing Dynamic Comics, which came out in 2000. Drawing American Manga Superheroes came out in 2005, I think, 2006, somewhere around there. The How to Draw Superhero sketchbook, and then it was about 2000, not 2019 maybe. I started just dipping my toe in, trying to do my own stuff, and do the crowdfund thing, and basically been doing that ever since. So, but the time I had working for Marvel and DC, when people ask would I go back to it, well, yeah, I mean, if they backed up a truck with and I was like, oh, look at all that money. But no, if I had total control, which will never happen. But honestly, the versions of the characters that I see now, I just don't have an interest in even drawing.
Right.
I got in, like I said, 91, and for 25, hell, probably 27 years, 28 years, I got to draw the versions of the characters that I basically grew up with, and just loved it. I thought it was great. And I guess I got it out of my system. And when I turned 50, so yeah, it's been about 5 years, 4.5, 5 years. When I turned 50, I thought, God, I don't want to be a guy that is like, 15, 20 years from now going, oh, I should have, with my own stuff.
Right.
And that's just, when I pretty much decided I'm just going to, give it a go and do my own stuff. So, yeah, that's it in a nutshell.
Awesome.
Me, I'm a little bit different of a story. I wasn't in the comic book business in terms of I wasn't a creator. I've been a collector it took me 44 years to go back and collect all the X-Men, all the way back to when I got my X-Men #1, got it cracked open and got Stan Lee to sign it while he was still with us. And I'm very glad I had done that.
Yeah.
So that was my pinnacle. That was one of my great things. I'm a comic book appraiser, so I do valuations and whole collections and things like that. And for a while, I was working with Comic Shop for a number of years. I slung books and, would set up and buy and sell books for them and things like that. But I've been role-playing Dungeons and Dragons, Star Frontiers, Marvel Superheroes, DC, 7C, if you name it, chances are I've played it, and I've been playing since really the very early 80s, back when the original box sets came out. And I've got so many different hobbies and things. I also do I do a lot of writing. I mean, I would put 40 hours a week into our D&D campaign that ran for 6 years with my friends. So, there was just so much to it. And Andy approached me one day about writing a new project. And he goes, I know you've written other stuff. So what about writing comics? This is how Andy and I wound up sitting down and figuring out Kor-Drath.
Yeah, and that's chat. The reason I do have all of the links in the description, and I will be putting them periodically in chat. But the reason
Thank
why I
you.
get to hang out with everybody today is because Kor-Drath The Awakenings campaign is currently active. It is currently live. If you want to back it, again, all the links are in the description. But yeah, you know, with Andy, I think I became first familiarized with your work with Red Sonja and Claw. I think it was like
Oh yeah,
Devil's Hands, right? And
yeah, yeah.
I was 9 at the time, so I wasn't
I was going
reading
to
it
say
when
that
it
was a long
was
time ago,
I
and
wasn't reading
before.
it when it was being published, but I did read it a couple of years later. I am
It's
glad I
like,
wasn't allowed to read that at 9 years old. Okay, but well, actually, was it 6 or 7? Was it
uh,
2006 or
oh,
7?
when it came out, it
Yeah.
was no, it was actually a little after that. It was I always go by the house I was living at the time. We were living there. It was about 2000. I think it was like 2010.
Oh, okay. So that's a couple years later than I thought.
I
Because I
think
thought it was
so.
like around 2007.
See
Either way,
now I'm really trying. You know what? You might be right. Actually, nope.
uh,
Stormwatch was
Red
2010, and I think I
Sonia,
did that before
Claw,
Stormwatch. I'll
Red
go with that.
Sonia.
2007. Sure, why not? Sounds good.
It's Devil's Hands, right?
Yeah, something like
Devil's
that.
Hands publish date. I'll look it up. You might be right.
I'll go with 2010.
2006.
Six. Oh my God!
So I
Wow.
was 8, but close enough. Close
I can't
enough.
believe it was 18 years ago. Oh,
Jeez.
Wow, dude.
wow.
Jeez. That's crazy. But yeah, I obviously wasn't reading it at release, but I've always had a very fond place in my heart for sword and sorcery comics, but also fantasy in general. And that is obviously a big, big part of Kor-Drath. So
Hmm.
for those who might not know what Kor-Drath is, why don't you tell them a little bit about it?
Kor-Drath is a mix of, well, the easiest way is saying you take Conan and dump him into a Game of Thrones type atmosphere, Dungeons and Dragons type atmosphere. When we were talking about it and coming up with the character, I wanted the couple things I wanted was just a straight out badass barbarian guy, and I wanted his partner in crime to be a female, and I wanted her to be a sorceress, just something totally different, not a barbarian based, just totally different. So, unlike where there's Conan and Red Sonja, which is basically guy barbarian, female barbarian, I
Yeah.
wanted two totally different things. And when I was talking to Dennis about it, I knew about his background with the fantasy based worlds of Dungeons and Dragons and so on and so forth.
Yeah.
So this is what we came up with, and basically, Kor-Drath takes place in a section of the world called the Shattered Reach. There's 11 main tribes in this area. We focus in the first book on 3 of them, which is the Red Lions tribe, who Kor-Drath belongs to, the Black Eagles tribe, which Adriana belongs to, and then there's the Anaconda tribe. Each tribe wears a specific tattoo to signify that's who they belong with. It can be anywhere. Obviously, for Kor-Drath being the main character, I put it, almost kind of like a Superman emblem on one side of his chest. But other people in his tribe might have it on their shoulder for him, whatever.
Yeah.
And Kor-Drath the Reckoning basically starts off with them, his tribe being attacked by the Anaconda tribe. And I mean, they haven't really gotten along, but this just seemed kind of weird. And it just leads them down this path, him and Adriana, to find out. Well, the Reckoning's been out for a while, so spoiler alert: his whole tribe
Oh
gets.
man, how could you spoil it for us?
I know, but it's been out for a long time.
Yeah.
His whole actually even says this on the Reckoning campaign page. His whole tribe was slaughtered, and
Yeah.
he's the last remaining survivor.
It does,
So
yeah.
yeah, so in that book, the main thrust of it is for him and Adriana to kind of go on this quest and find out why. Why was this tribe slaughtered like this? and stuff. Wouldn't you say that's about it, Dennis? And then if you want to describe the Awakening, the current one, I'll
Yes.
hand it off to you.
So, yeah, I will answer one question as we go into it. Master Farce Theater asked if I played Chainmail. So, yes, I am really old. I have played Chainmail, but not when it came out. I was way too young for that. But when the box sets came out, I did have somebody that had Chainmail. I have played it. It was a very convoluted mass war system. Yeah, I never did own it. So that is one that I never did own. But thank you for really making me feel old there.
See, I saw that and I never even heard of it. And I thought to myself, is this somebody cracking a joke like, hey, Dennis, did you ever role play dressing up in chainmail with the ladies?
Only you come up with those
LARPing
kind of
over here, LARP Andy.
Did you dress up in chainmail and have the little lady dress up as a French maid as your role play?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So Kor-Drath the Awakening picks up. So the first story ended with a bit of a surprise ending, and I got lots of great responses from people who read it. They love the ending and stuff like that. But it was pretty much a self-contained story. But there was just like a larger arc. Think of a large epic tale. You've got something that'll go from start to finish, but then you're going to have these individual stories, missions, adventures, whatever you want to call it, that are self-contained in it. So this next one does pick up just a little bit after the first one, and they now have a epic quest that they have to go on, and things are starting to become a little more clear that they're in a much bigger, let's call it a battle. There's a lot more going on. They're peeling back the layers of the onion to figure out what it is they have to do. And this next one introduces brand new monsters, and I don't mean things from Dungeons and Dragons. These are all brand new monsters that were completely created from the ground up, with all new stats, things like that. And then Andy designed them completely from scratch. So there's going to be a lot more involved in this storytelling as they move forward. It's going to be a lot of action, a lot of intrigue. You're going to get introduced to more races, because the first book took place in the map in a very small area. We're basically just dealing with, barbarian tribes. But as the story gets bigger, it's going to expand, and you're going to start going to different parts of, the map in the world, and running into, new creatures and learning about them. Magic is completely different than it would be in like your standard role playing, or in your typical sword and sorcery books. So I had to outline and define all of that, how magic works and things like that. So there's a lot to it. But this whole project is about world building. I'm 100% about world building. Like when we made up Kor-Drath and Adriana and all the main characters, I've got 100 questions that I always answer about them, their family, their history, their lineage. So they are so fleshed out that no matter what we decide to do, we move forward, and it's just going to expand. It's a very rich world and environment.
That's awesome. And unfortunately, I feel like I wouldn't say all new storytelling, obviously, but with a lot of storytelling, there are authors and creators who are not, I don't know, I don't want to say are not very good at it, but they typically pick like really delving in on the characters, but then the general world building might not be completely, very well described, or you have it vice versa. And that to me is really what makes a cohesive story, is having these very believable characters that you can understand, but also having the world in which they fit in and how it changes around them, and being able to, answer those questions off the fly because you've already, established your characters and you know them so well, even if the readers don't yet, because you're only so many issues in. It's great to hear that you guys are kind of ahead of that curve and you have so many ideas already regarding your characters and the world building.
Yeah. And it's to the point where, we did, or I'll show, we did the first one. So we kind of tied in Kor-Drath the Reckoning and This is Mayhem in the Myrmidor Mountains. And Bart Sears did the art on that one with Dan Lawless cover. But I designed this very much for those of you that are old like me. I designed this to look just like the late 70s, early 80s modules that TSR used to put out. And even when you go into the inside, it was the 2 columns. Sometimes they were 3, but I like the 2 column better. And it's the reading. All your text are in the boxes that you read, and all the way through it. So we've designed a system where you can play a role-playing game. I made this one 5e compatible. And so you can read the story, get a really good sense, and then the module tells a different tale, and it expands the world building even more because they kind of go hand in hand.
Right. And that to me is very cool because it seems like you both definitely are able to bounce off of each other well in that regard, because it sounds like Dennis knows maybe a little bit more about tabletop, where Andy is the one who is obviously doing the art, but you guys are working together in unison on the story, so you each are able to do things that highly benefit the project. It's not just like, oh, there's only one of you doing one thing and then one of you doing another thing. And it seems like you guys kind of mesh really well together in that sense.
Yeah, I mean, you summed it up really well. I'm learning more about the tabletop role-playing game world because it's not that I wasn't interested in that stuff as a kid. I was, and I think I shocked Dennis when he held up a book, a D&D book, or whatever you call it, from back in the day. It was a hardcover book, and I go, "Oh, I had that one." And he's like, "You had that?" And I was like, "I bought it for the art." But when I was growing up, I was so focused, besides collecting comics, I just wanted to draw comics for a living. So on my free time, instead of doing role-playing games and stuff, I would just draw. So Dennis is teaching me about that stuff. And then when it comes to the creation of comics and what goes into the production of them and stuff like that, that's where I come in, helping him. Now, that was a lot more through the first book. Because now, he's got it down pretty well. I mean, there are still little things, but overall,
now he can kick you to the curb. We don't need you anymore, Andy.
Nobody wants to see a Kor-Drath graphic novel with shitty stick figures. Just saying.
I am telling you, there is so much involved on the back end of designing the book. Andy's phenomenal. Yeah. I mean, he should be an art director on top of it. He's so good at it. But no, we do mesh because I do know that, just like he gave me, scripts, and he goes, "You've never written comics. You've written prose, you've written stories, you've done all this other stuff. But writing comics is a completely different animal." And I was like, okay. Yeah. So he goes, "Here's some examples, go for it, and let's see what you turn out." So I did, and I wrote it down, and it was a head slapper because he's like, Nope. After going through it, he goes, "You've got so much in here. You've got enough for a trilogy in this one book. You can't put that much in." I was like, "What?" So then he breaks it down, and he's like,
I was like Alan Moore, step back some.
He's out here with a freaking novella ready to get published.
Yeah, I mean, I was just like, holy crap, dude.
Which is great that you were able to be so inspired and do that, but at the same time, it doesn't work for a comic.
So he goes, "Are you going to re-edit it?" And I said, "Nope." I took the script, threw it over there, and I said, "Starting all over." So I did. Yeah. I started from scratch, understand what it went through, and then I wrote out the first 10 pages because I write full script. And I sent it over, and I said, "What do you think?" And he's like, oh, that's much better. That's good. Can you do another group of pages like that?" So I did. Yep. And then I had to understand how he draws from what I'm writing, and I have to write to his strengths, and he's got to draw to what I'm trying to say. So the cool thing is, this is a full-blown collaboration because I have so much as I'm writing this in my mind, putting out there, and I have to try and put this on paper. Well, I try to make it very clear, but you don't always. So instead of going, oh, Andy going, I don't know what he means, he'll just be like, dude, what's up? What did you mean by this? Or whatever that. And we just talk and we work out everything. So, it's a completely collaborative effort.
Yeah, and that's
Yeah.
awesome. And I know that you have said it's very, Kor-Drath is very similar to a Conan and Game of Thrones, and it's filled with expansive adventures. But I need a promise from you guys, okay, that we're not going to have a George R. Martin on our hands where you start a story, okay, and then a trillion years later, you're like, oh, I'm just going to pick this back up because that's what he's done.
Oh, I
The
know.
main line was
Oh.
pushed to the side in order for TV shows and Fire and Blood. And I love all of his work, don't get me wrong, but I've been waiting half my life for Winds of Winter, George. Get it out already. Come on, guys.
Totally
No,
agree.
that won't. My OCD would never let that happen. Anyhow.
All I will say is, as long as these books continue to be very, they do really well, and it keeps us super excited, we will keep putting it out because there's an endless number of possibilities. This story arc with Kor-Drath by itself, we've got it lined up for 4 books. I've already got it already scripted out. And, and everybody's like, what next? I mean, could there be another Kor-Drath? I mean, there could. If this is going really strong, it could be something else in the world. Who knows? It is limitless what we can do with it. But this first one is set through 4 graphic novels, to finish out the original Kor-Drath tale.
Yeah, and that's awesome. And you guys have already seen a lot of success with Kor-Drath, with The Reckoning taking in, I believe it's over $100,000, but I don't know the exact amount. But I know that was over 100,000, right?
$11 short of 109,000.
Whew, that is crazy. But also The Awakening so far with, let me update this. I think that this was updated, but either way, already, yep, 32,730, which is absolutely fantastic. And then, of course, I know that Andy has done other individual works over the years, of course, but I think it sounds like Kor-Drath is kind of the focus right now, right?
Oh yeah, totally. I mean, the first thing I did in crowdfunding, well, the first thing wasn't even a graphic novel. It was a template book for character design. But the first storytelling thing I did was called Jungle Lords Ultra, and it was a flip book to where literally, now I'm looking for a book. You'd think I'd have a comic next to me. You looked at it and you saw the cover, and then when you were done reading, you knew you were done because all of a sudden pages were upside down, and that was the cue to flip it to the other side. And the reason I did that was it was 2 separate stories, and I was like, I want to draw a cover for each one. I don't want to just do, so I was like, I'll just do a flip book. So after that, I brought First Man back, which was my creator-owned character that I created as a kid. He's a superhero. And I did 1 issue from Image in the late 90s, but I never finished it. So I brought that back to finish off that first one. And then after that, I did a second book with First Man. And then it was after that where, Dennis and I were driving to a show in Fayetteville, North Carolina. So about 3 hours from where we live, 4 hours or so. And, when I approached him about this idea, because I just want to do something totally different, just, not superhero, not real world, just totally different. And the first thing that came to mind before I talked to Dennis about it was going back to the Red Sonja Claw stuff. Was basically fantasy based because, I drew that stuff in 2006. And then after that, I did a 6-issue Claw miniseries for DC. So, that was 10 issues of, basically a year's worth of just working in that genre. And up until that point in my career, I never had before. So that was 15 years into my career. And up until that point, it was all superhero stuff. and now I'm drawing this. And when I first, did that stuff, it was I was nervous because I never drew that genre before. But once
Yeah.
I got into it, I was like, this stuff's fantastic. It's really fun, and I think part of it's because it's not like, oh, this takes place in this city. Well, I got to reference what this city looks like.
Right.
Oh,
Right.
there's cars on the street. And, I grew up in a time reading comics where you could get away with more stylized renditions of even buildings and stuff. Jack Kirby, New York, you're like, you just believed it, but there are no
Yeah.
buildings that look like that.
Well, yeah. No.
And same with vehicles and whatever. But, as a freelance artist, you kind of go with the times. And with my stuff being more pseudo realistic is what I like to call it. Art style wise, if I'm drawing New York, I'm going to reference it. If I'm drawing cars in a street, I'm going to reference the cars.
Oh, yeah.
So getting to the fantasy stuff, it was like, I don't even need a ruler anymore,
No. Yeah.
So it was just, it was a nice change of pace, and the rest is history. It's just really fun to draw. And not saying First Man isn't. I'd like to get back to it at some point, but for now, the focus is on Kor-Drath. So,
well,
Right.
the other thing we had is Andy's got his YouTube channel. I've got mine. And then when we do our shows together, we simul-stream on both of them. So we got a large audience that we draw on. And a lot of them were like, why don't you guys do something fantasy? They're like, Dennis does RPG stuff. And they're always talking about stuff in the chats. And, when we were driving and talking about this, we're like, dude, we've got a built-in audience because they are always saying we should do something along those lines. So if we're going to do something, why not? I will enjoy it. You will enjoy it. They will enjoy it. And I'm like, feels like a win-win-win to me.
Yeah, no, I mean, I definitely agree. And, when it comes to the artwork in Kor-Drath, it's very reminiscent of the good days of Dungeons and Dragons art, like Larry Elmore, Daniel Horn, and even things like, World of Warcraft in the early 2000s with like the starter edition elf. And she's very ethereal and kind of whimsical. And it's similar because she's also got like this blonde hair and this crimson top, and she's just a bombshell. But, that is a big focus, I think, for me with this is your females are innately feminine, which is one of the things I think is captured so well in your work. And of course, you have these masculine buff men and of course the feminine women. But when you're trying to make books like this, you want to try to reach beyond comic readers and reach the audience that are just fantasy fans in general. And it really seems like what you're saying, that is an audience that you have, and ultimately you wanted to provide a really good product for.
Yeah, and when it goes into the design of the characters, even like there's a character in the Awakening, won't name any names, and I remember before I started drawing the book, for new characters, I'll obviously do design sheets and whatnot, and so I designed a couple characters and stuff, and then I'm like, oh man, this guy doesn't last long. That's okay. He's cool looking, and that's what he's there. I just try to make the characters fit in the world, fit in with the tribe or camp they belong to. So that was the other thing with Kor-Drath's tribe, the Red Lions. They're definitely more barbaric, more nomadic. They lived in like tents and stuff because they would move around, and not that everybody dressed like Kor-Drath with just like a loincloth, but they weren't really more, for lack of a better word, you look at Adriana and she almost looks more high tech, I guess you could say, for this world.
Yeah.
Sophisticated. There you go.
Yeah.
And the Black Eagles tribe is they don't move around. So their structures and their buildings are, made out of wood and stone because they're stationary. And when I draw the people in that tribe, I try to think of just the design elements that I gave Adriana to sprinkle in throughout, so you can definitely look at the two types and go, oh yeah, they're from different tribes, just like, different parts of the country, or actually different parts of the world.
Right. And it's
We
so,
have a look, and other areas will, people will have a different
yeah.
aesthetic to what
Well,
they
right.
wear.
That's what I was going to say, is that sometimes it's about more than just the words and saying, hey, she's
Right,
from one tribe and he's from another. It's
right,
the visual cues as well, which obviously, when we're talking about a comic, is so very important. And I think my chat would also agree that you've done a very good job at them not looking so wildly different that it feels like they're from different universes, but
right.
they mesh in very subtle ways that make it seem like, oh, yes, obviously they're part of the same universe, but they do look different enough to the point where you can tell instantly, oh, they are definitely from a different tribe.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah. And part of that is when we, sat down and designed everything. Like I said, I did the front end of the world building stuff. So I have a calendar. There's 2 moons in this world, and it's a different calendar than what we would use. And all of these things have effect. It's all these little details. And then how does that translate into story? And then how does that story then translate into the visual aspects of the character, the world, how things affect one another, how magic works? And this is what we had to come up with. How do you take what I can put on paper in writings and things like that, and visually turn that for Andy into the world that you see? And it turned out pretty decent.
Yeah. No, I would definitely agree. And I mean, obviously, you have compared it to Game of Thrones and kind of fantasy novels and stuff, but like Game of Thrones or Wheel of Time, Terry Brooks and Sanderson fans, there's a lot of people out there who might not know a lot about comics. And when they hear comics, they think of superheroes. And while there are definitely plenty of amazing, superhero comics there are, of course, plenty of sword and sorcery comics out there, I think it's great to see more being created, because I am a massive fantasy fan. I have bookshelves of fantasy books. That's really where my interest has always been drawn. And it's
sure.
so great to see more being made, because I feel like a problem in recent times is fantasy equals what some people would call controversial tropes, things like
Yeah.
slavery, things like brutality and excessive gore. And I've my chat has talked about it a lot with me, but we almost feel like, George is afraid to continue the mainline series because he is afraid of how his themes would be taken now and how people would respond to them. Things like
Right.
incest, and again, just those more brutal themes or deemed as controversial themes. And it definitely seems like you're not afraid to shy away if that's where your mind goes and where you think the creative direction is going with this.
So
Well, I
I
think.
think I think
Oh, go
you're
ahead.
dead on that, by the way. Because my background, I'm huge into novels. So when I was younger, it was Piers Anthony. You'd get stuck in with Piers Anthony, and then um, Forgotten Realms. Forgotten Realms was our realm of choice. So all the Forgotten Realms book, I literally read them all at the time. And then Terry Brooks, the Shannara, one of my
Yes.
favorite.
Yes, I agree.
The Elfstones of Shannara is probably my favorite standalone book. It was an
Mhm.
absolute masterpiece, and what they did to it on TV made me sad. But
Yeah, wow.
Wheel of Time, another good one. But you can take any of those great classics, outside of Tolkien, and you can sit there and any of those stories today, they're going to be under the exact same criticism and scrutiny that George R. Martin is. And honestly, you just kind of need to get over it and realize, tell the story that you were meant to tell. There are people that are going to love your works. There are people that are going to hate it. And then there'll be everybody in the middle with different degrees of what they're going to like.
Yeah.
It is what it is, but tell your story and finish it and just be done with it. So just saying, I kind of agree with you there.
Yeah, yeah. And it's sad because we're talking about like Wheel of Time and we're talking about Game of Thrones and we have seen so many of these properties be adapted now. And it's so sad because when, the Amazons decide to make shows about the Wheel of Time or the Rings of Power or Netflix with The Witcher, they aren't adapting them the way that their creators would have wanted. And in a lot of cases, the creators have straight up admitted, oh, yeah, at first everything was going well. And then they took a complete 180, like Andrzej Sapkowski, who writes The Witcher. He had said initially he loved The Witcher show. He was so happy that Cavill was part of it. And then he recently, of course, after Cavill decided to leave, he said, yeah, I'm not behind the show anymore. Like, I'm just not happy with the direction that they're headed in. And it's so sad because we're talking about such amazing pieces of work here that are being annihilated by the activists that have infected the industry.
Well,
Yeah, absolutely.
I think when they're adapting the stuff, that they're kind of even hoping that it's like, we're just going to shoot it out there. We'll change it, hoping that, yes, people are going to tune in that have read the books, but who knows? Maybe we'll get more people that never have, so they don't know, right? So like Game of Thrones for me is a good example because I never read any of that. I watched some of
Still,
Game of Thrones. I
you've
can
never
fully
read
admit.
Game of Thrones?
No.
Oh my gosh, you got to get off this stream. You are banned from this establishment.
Oh, Vera, you got to understand, it doesn't have pictures. If it doesn't have
No. You're banned. Get out of here, Andy.
It is. So
Dennis is my favorite.
Of course.
So one, this is the truth. It has nothing to do with the pictures, even though I do like comics because of the pictures. But that's because I'm an artist.
Surely, that's not it.
No. It's honestly, I can't remember the last time I read a novel. Probably.
Okay, that opens up a whole other can of worms.
Well, probably. I don't know if Dennis can attest to this because Dennis and I both have. He has 2 kids. I have 1.
It takes a lot of time to read, especially when you're creating.
Well, and this is just it. After a day of, before my daughter will be 21 in 2 weeks. Before we had her, I'd have more time to read, but that's not even it either. It's just honestly, after a day of sitting at the desk, 8 to 10 hours and drawing, the last thing I want to do at night is using my brain even more. I just, I would tell people, and this is God's honest truth, I would tell people that it's like, because they would, they'd always make jokes, because most of my friends, yes, I have lots of friends that do this for a living, but they're sprinkled throughout the country. Now, of course, with YouTube, we can get together more, whatever. But before that, wherever I lived, it was me, and then most of my local friends had real jobs, weren't into comics, whatever, which was fine. Yeah. But they would bust chops sometimes. They'd be like, how are you tired at the end of the day? You sit at a desk and draw all day.
It's not that simple, though.
And right. And I'd be like, look, I've done labor type jobs before, when I was in art school and stuff, summer breaks and whatnot. And at the end of the day, doing that, you're physically tired. But mentally, I was never tired, So that's why I could go home after a day of, hanging gutters or whatever and be like, I want to draw something.
Right.
But man, after a day of drawing all day, I just want to click the TV on and kind of veg out and read some funny books, you know? And I've picked up some novels, and the other problem is, and it's not a joke at all, I have ADHD, and people with ADHD and reading, it's very difficult because there's other things that go into it, like a little bit of dyslexia and stuff. It's all this nice sprinkled mess in my head.
Yeah.
So it's funny how Dennis said to backtrack, he'll write the script and then we'll talk it over. So for instance, he'll write a chunk of like 20 pages and we'll get on the phone and spend a half hour going over it. And what I really like is it sinks in more talking it through. It gets in more than when I read it. Because with reading just blocks of text, I don't know what it is. And it's not a conscious thing, but the next thing I'll know, I'll be 3 pages later and be like, how the hell did I get here? And then I got to go back 3 pages and reread it again, you know? And that just makes reading a novel frustrating as hell.
Yeah, definitely.
Well,
So
see,
I'm just like,
that all kind of ties in with, you know, and I'll bring out one example that did work. You know, we're talking about Game of Thrones and stuff, but let's go back to the original, The Godfather, the Tolkien, right?
Yep.
And when Peter Jackson said, I'm going to make the Lord of the Rings trilogy, everybody's like, oh, no, it's going to be terrible. And he made one conscious decision that he talked about. He goes, I am not going to put my biases and judgment into this. I want to put the original creators, I want J.R.R. Tolkien, I want his thought process, his biases, how he wrote it. And that is what I want to go under. And it really is one of the greatest trilogies ever made. And especially the extended editions where for those of us that loved it, but then the extended editions, oh my gosh, you got the strand of hair. Oh, remember reading that. It was a great part in the book. It was worth the 12 hours of your time because he was so faithful to it. There's a reason why that book is so popular, because it is so well done. The problem is today in comic books, just like it is in novels, anybody who picks it up, like X-Men, the reason why I quit X-Men, they pick it up and they're like, oh, here's all of this. They did 544 issues of this. Well, you know what? Here's my issue of it. I don't care what they did at all in the past. I can do it better. They think they are smarter than the original creators of these properties, and they are wrong 100% of the time.
Oh, yeah. And actually, I don't know if you know this, you might. When Amazon was doing the Rings of Power and before, you know, with season 1, they were in talks to get Jackson back, but he declined because he didn't like the direction they were going. And this is the problem with, I think, Hollywood and a lot of companies, even in mainstream comics. They are hiring people who are not the best people for the job simply because they're new to the industry, and they will kiss their boots and they will say, I'll do whatever you want. I'm so grateful you hired me. Whatever narrative you want me to put in this, I will do it. And it's so fucking sad. It is so pathetic that this has happened because you could have had Peter Jackson back and you didn't do everything in your power to get that done.
But even along with Peter Jackson, no, just say on that for a second. When the Rings of Power were coming out, you know, I'm terrible with names for this, but there was a gentleman that they hired even after Peter turned it down. He was the Lord Keeper for the estate of Tolkien, and he was there to make sure that they stayed true to everything that Tolkien was putting it out, and they weren't. And he became critical of them. And somebody in your chat probably knows the name.
Shippey, Tom Shippey.
It is. Thank you.
Yep.
See,
Tom
you
Shippey.
guys are as smart as our guys. Thank you. I love it. And they were not faithful at all. So he became open. So what did Amazon do? They fired him because we want to go woke and you're not going to let us do that. Well, no, because there is nothing woke in Lord of the Rings.
Yeah.
So when it goes to what was it, Dennis? Somebody IDW writing Star Trek, I think it was, and they're like, "Oh yeah, I've never read Star Trek before, or watched it, or whatever," and they're going to write it. And they think of it, and like the people that hire these people think that's a good thing because they're like, "Oh, they'll bring something fresh to it." It's like, no, you've got to understand the source material. You know, there's a reason. Like, if I got hired to, write Captain America, I'm not saying I want to go back to 1940s and when it was first created and read everything, but I will definitely go back to some of the classic runs, and reread them and stuff, because you want to understand the character.
Oh yeah,
and it's not your job as the writer and artists too, but specifically a writer, to go in and go, yeah, Captain America stands for, this, but I kind of stand for this, so I'm going to put that in there as well. It's like, no, that is not your job.
Right. Well, it's also
You
like them changing, Superman's motto and all of these different
right.
mottos of these characters and their sigils because, oh, they stand for something that I don't. Who gives a fuck about
Right.
what you stand for? Let's keep it a buck, okay? We want to know what Superman stands for. He is not you. And I feel like this is such a big issue with self-inserting political ideologies. And it's never simply respecting the material that came before and trying to, I wouldn't necessarily say replicate that because obviously
No.
one series isn't going to be exactly like another series,
Mm.
but holding a level of respect for the creators that came before, for the versions of the characters that came before, and we're just not seeing that in any industry at this point.
No,
I mean, if
Star Trek is what Andy brought up, and that is, your viewers may not know me, but I'm a huge Trekkie. My saddest day was when we moved into this house. I got rid of all of my Forgotten Realms novels, my Dragonlance novels, and all my Star Trek novels because I had read almost all of them. I loved it. I just don't have room for it. Yeah. So I still get the comic book. So I've got all the comics, and I'm missing one of the gold key, and then I have almost all of the Star Trek all the way through. Love it. But man, I'll tell you, this IDW Star Trek is terrible. It is bad science fiction, and it doesn't feel like Star Trek. So I talked to my comic shop owner, and I said, I am really getting close to canceling all my Star Trek titles. And he goes, oh, no, you canceled all X-Men, all Marvel and DC. Are you going to cancel that? I'm like, he goes,
yeah, peace, bye.
Right. And I'm like, because I swear to God, none of these writers have ever watched or read Star Trek. I mean, He goes, really? And he goes, yeah. I says, this is what it feels like. Lo and behold, fast forward a couple of weeks, and San Diego Comic-Con's on. And my friends were out there, and it had they videoed it, and they said, Dennis, I hate to do this to you, but you need to watch the IDW chat room that they did. So they were up there, and they asked them, they were like, so you're the IDW Star Trek writers. What is your favorite episode? Oh, we don't watch Star Trek. Oh, okay. Well, what's your favorite book, your favorite novel? Oh, we don't read Star Trek. What? You haven't watched any of the Star Trek. You haven't read any of the Star Trek. So you know nothing about Star Trek, which is literally what I told the comic shop owner just a few weeks previous. So I walked in, I'm like, cancel them all. I said, we just got definitive proof. This is why they suck so bad.
Right. And it's not like they have to be experts at the topic. It's not like they have to have watched every episode 5 times over, consumed every piece of lore and understand every character in depth, but at least having a general feel and a general understanding is all that it really takes. And these people do not put in even a little bit of amount of time to try to do that. Even if they're lying, they're not even trying to lie. They're just like, yeah, I don't really care about this. I just wanted money.
Yes.
Well, if I was working at Marvel or DC, I would say that I want a character Bible written up for all the main characters, the big ones. I'm not saying like, at Marvel, the Water Wizard, that guy. Go look at the, official handbook for the Marvel Universe for that guy. But for like Captain America, give me a good character Bible that is, it could be as short as like 2 pages with just bullet points on the character, or it could be 20 pages, whatever. Just so it's like, hey, you're going to write this, you've got to read this. And, if you want to go back and read other Cap stuff, totally fine. Obviously, do what you want, but you've got to at least read this to get the bullet points so you can understand the character and what you're going to be writing for us. And and then, the editor has to obviously know these characters inside and out as well. So when they read the script, they can call them up and be like, no, dude, he would never do this. Character would never act this way. It's totally out of character.
Right.
But, you know, I think one of the things is these days is, you know, depending on the writer, if you're just starting out, you'll probably get pushback. But if you've been around for a while and you're considered one of the big writers for the company, they probably don't get any pushback because, like, oh no, we can't lose this guy.
Right.
You know, and
Exactly.
it's like, no, everybody can be critiqued. You know, there's nothing wrong with that. You know, as long as it's not, it's the old thing of, look, I don't mind a critique, and I, you know, I do portfolio reviews and stuff. You never just go, yeah, this sucks, bye, next.
Yeah,
And I would never say it that harsh anyhow.
Yeah,
but
you guys
the point
fucking
is,
suck, and you should
right,
quit your job.
Right, that's how I would put it. And it's like, wow, what's your other job? Oh, McDonald's. Practice hard at McDonald's. No, but you want to back it up. So if you're going to say something, if you're going to critique something, be able to follow up with why. You know, why did you just say that?
Right,
you know?
exactly. Yeah.
So,
and, you know, with the comic book industry basically hiring nobodies to replace the people, to replace established people in some cases because they feel that they have a better understanding of modern audiences, which don't actually exist. They're just the sensitive snowflakes on social media. How do you feel about them hiring these people? I mean, I'm sure that you're very unhappy to hear that this is happening and that, you know, better writers are not given the chance because they want to hire diversity hires or people that will push their narratives. But how do you feel about that going on in the mainstream?
well, I mean, one of the things that's just kind of weird to me is, you know, once again, going back to when I started reading comics, Dennis started reading comics, you'd see these guys' names on books, creators' names on books for decades, you know, and while some of the guys that were writing comics and stuff when I got into the business, I mean, there's a handful that still are. Dan Jurgens is still, you know, still writing stuff, but you know, there's other guys that wrote really good stuff and you don't see them anymore. And it's like, well, why not? Their stuff was selling back then. It was really good. The fans liked it. You don't boot somebody, and this goes for artists as well. You just don't kick them to the curb because you know, there's somebody new or younger or whatever that, or if you can even pay them a little less, because it's like, what are you doing? This guy is still hitting on all cylinders, you know. In regards to the art side, since I can speak to that more, you know, everybody obviously, if they're good enough, give them a chance and have them work. But I still think you've got to, you know, it's merit based. You got to work your way up. And a lot of the stuff I see coming out from Marvel and DC, I was telling this other guy podcast I was on, I was like, it's like they took How to Draw Comics the Marvel way. And, you know, in that book, John Buscema, the artist of it, did, you know, he was showing motion in the figure. And he showed basically, let's say, a guy punching. And he basically took you through the motion of, this is like realism. And then he did like 5 or 6 different drawings of the guy punching, right?
Yeah.
And he pointed out, like, no, not this one, because the figure was almost standing upright. And it's true. If you look at a boxer and a boxer's punching somebody, they're not leaning over that much. They're almost upright.
Right.
Well, yeah. On live TV, it's moving so fast. Okay, that looks cool. Yeah. But in comics, that's boring as all hell. So then John draws the figure to the extreme where he's almost, you know, horizontal punching this dude. And that just has so much movement and so much action to it.
Yeah.
And it's almost like nowadays I see more people when I flip through comics, and it's like they're drawing the static, boring way. And it's like, stop referencing stuff so heavy, because that's what I'm assuming they're doing. And pay attention to, like, one of the best things I think somebody that wants to draw comics can do is really pay attention to animation as well, because animation is all about a thing called squash and stretch, you know, and it's the keyframes that if you look at the individual drawings per second, you can see how they're squashing a figure or stretching it to give it this feeling of movement. Then when you put all of them together, you know, you really get the nice action and stuff. Right. And it's just kind of lost now. It's a lost art. And it's yeah. I mean, it's just sad.
But to tie into that, look at what Marvel's doing. My favorite's X-Men. Chris Claremont's one of my favorite writers. And he's under contract from Marvel, and they're paying him not to write. They are literally giving him a paycheck not to create. So it harkens back to like the 70s under Jimmy Carter, where they're like, don't grow your crops, farmers. We'll just pay you not to grow them. What? So you're paying this guy money to sit there and do nothing, and he's phenomenal. And you're bringing on all these new people that can't write, don't know the history, and you're paying them to write really bad stories. Something does not make sense about any of this. And it doesn't take a rocket science to figure out, you know, that they're getting DEI money and stuff on the backside. And, you know, it's ridiculous. You've got a natural talent that you're paying to sit on your hands. Seriously, just let him put out some X-Men stuff, even if he couldn't put that much out in a time, you know, let him work on it for months and then just release it as, but they won't do it. That's because there's an agenda in play.
Right. And that is
he is writing
sad.
something right now. He is actually writing something right now for Marvel. It's because we were looking at it on, what was it, The Professionals a few weeks back, and it goes back to X-Men 268. Remember the one with the famous cover with Captain America, Black Widow, Wolverine?
Black Widow, yep.
And they were in Madripoor. I think I pronounced that right.
Yep.
So basically, it's a story that ties into when they were in Madripoor. Thank you. When they were in Madripoor. But the reason we were looking at it is because the art, and once again, I don't mean this in a mean way, but the art just was lacking, you know? And we were looking at it and we're like, why would this happen? And then why would this happen? We're like, who wrote this? And we saw Chris Claremont wrote it. And we were like, what? And the first thing I thought was, well, maybe he's still writing, maybe he's writing plot style. Because when I worked with Chris on those couple issues of X-Men Forever, you know, he wrote the old school Marvel plot style, not panel by panel breakdown.
Right.
And if he's working that way, I could see why this artist might have been making some of the decisions he was making, because, you know, basically it's like, no, this guy should be working full script, panel 1, panel 2, panel 3, you know. But I don't know how it was done. But point is, Chris is doing something, but I know what you're saying, you know.
Well, but
he should be writing X-Men full time.
I mean, he's been under contract for years.
Yeah. Well, and it's like, you know, I don't know, Vera, if you've seen, I assume you know who John Byrne is. I know you're young, so okay.
Yep.
So you know how John drew like 31 issues of X-Men just for fun?
Really?
Yeah.
That many?
He drew. I've got them all in 5 trade paperbacks.
Oh, nice.
He penciled 31 issues of X-Men, and Dennis, was it Hidden Years? Was that the name of it? I can't remember what he called it. No, Hidden Years was the book that came out. I can't remember what he called it. But the point is, he basically took it from a period of time. Dennis has a couple too, so he's probably getting them.
Yeah.
He started the story that he was writing from a period of time when X-Men was right after or right around, you know, Giant Size, somewhere in there with, you know, Colossus, the new X-Men from then. And he just, he penciled. He didn't ink it. He penciled it and lettered 31 issues of X-Men. They, you know, basically you put a good inker on the stuff and a good colorist, and I mean, that stuff would just that's just printing money.
It is great.
But from what I know, there it is. Oh, Elsewin, that's it. It's
Elsewin, and I'll just kind of show. So Here's
it's printing money, and him and Marvel, from what I know, he talked with Marvel. I think it was with CB Sobalski, and they just couldn't come to terms. And I'm just like, oh my God, everybody that's seen this stuff is just like, this is just printing money.
Yeah.
Just get it. Yeah.
guys, this is great stuff. The story is really good. The art is phenomenal. And I mean, when you think of some of the great team ups in in creators in X-Men, John Byrne is always talked about right in there, like with his Claremont run and stuff like that. And but this stuff is just it's fantastic. And the fact that he did all of this because he liked it so much. So he did this knowing he's never going to get paid for it. Talk to him, and they're like, no. We don't want you to put out good material. So
that's so fucking sad. That is just so heartbreaking.
Well, yes. And the thing is, I don't, like I said, from what I heard, I know there was talk, and they just couldn't come to terms. I don't know what it could be that they couldn't come to terms. I mean, if I was Marvel, I'd be like, okay, what are we looking at? Like, what would it cost us per issue? Right? Because he did 31 of them. So it's like, what would it cost us per issue for the pencils and writing? Because that's what he did. And then, John Byrne throws out a number. If it's super ridiculous high, come in a little lower, and then agree on a number. And then after that, hire a great inker, hire great colors, hire a few inkers that are really top notch, top of the echelon. They're out there, because that's the other sad thing is, there are so many good inkers that you don't see working anymore because you've got guys doing full art, pencils and inks. Yeah. And look, I'm one of those guys, but a lot of them are doing it, and they're doing it digital, and you just look at it and you're like, could have used an inker. Right. And once again, that's the editor's fault because they don't know any better. They're just like, oh, this guy can do pencils and inks. That's nice. We can save a little money. Cool. He's doing it digital. Fantastic. No FedEx to worry about. No shipping or anything for sending the pencils to the inker to work over. And it's just crazy that they couldn't come to a deal on that. I'd love to know really why it fell apart.
Right. But we're never going to get a straight answer on that, unfortunately.
The Naked Canadian, he said contents rights is most likely what killed it. And there is probably truth to that because, Byrne's like, hey, I drew this, I did all of this. I've got to have something. And you know how Marvel is right now. Oh, we don't want to pay you that.
I guess the only thing I would say back to that, though, is because I read all 31 issues. There's nothing that I saw in it that he created brand new, like character-wise or anything. It was all the existing characters. So, I mean, at that point, it's like, well, yeah, you'll get a royalty cut because it's one of the two. It's either like, we'll give you this big fat-ass fee for all 31 issues. Right. Or we'll give you this per issue plus royalties, But beyond that, you don't own any of the characters. You know what I mean?
This was so good. They should turn this into an X-Men trilogy.
How I'll ask because I saw Chad ask, how do you feel about X-Men 97, the new show?
So you're laughing, Dennis. Dennis, let me answer first.
Can you sum it up in a few paragraphs?
Well, the only reason I want to go first is because Dennis and I have talked about this, but there's been a little change since we talked about it. So last night, I actually started watching it again. Yeah. So I never watched it in the first place in the 90s. And, Dennis was like, what? How could you not watch it? Blah, blah, blah. And I was like, dude, I was literally I just broke into the business. I was drawing comics for a living. The last thing on my mind was like, I'm going to watch an X-Men cartoon. Yeah. I don't even think I knew about it. So, so that's one reason. So, 97 comes out. So I watched the first episode. Dennis watched it. He's like, it's really good. You got to watch it. I'm like, okay. So I watched the first episode. I think the animation is obviously better. But I don't know. I was just kind of. It's funny being a cartoonist drawing comics. I'm not huge into watching current new cartoons. I like Space Ghost, Thundar, the old stuff.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I got through the first episode, but I wasn't like blown away. Like, oh my god, this is the best thing since sliced bread. Now the new thing is last night after the professional show. I went in the house and I wasn't really that tired. So I was like, let me watch some more. So I'm actually up to 4 right now. I know, right, Dennis? And I do. I actually do enjoy it because, I got to say, I'm watching it and I'm like, God damn it. Why can't they look like this in the freaking comics? Go back to these costumes. Give me some good superhero stuff again, and it's just like it's what the comics were in the 90s, just really good stuff. So yeah, I want to is it all out already, Dennis? I don't even know. Okay, so I'm going to keep watching it.
No, so
I do like it.
The X-Men animated series was one of my favorites. Right behind Batman, the animated series is probably my favorite of all time. And which is sad because I like X-Men more, but the style, the original storytelling was so comic book-esque. They captured the feel in the 90s. It was like watching comic books. Everything about it, I loved it. It wasn't perfect. Like I said, the animation on Batman was mind-blowing at the time, and it definitely deserves kudos and was the best. So now I hear that they're putting out X-Men 97 in the same style. They got back many of the same voice actors who, overall, that's not that bad. The storylines, the art is in the exact similar style. It's a little bit better. They've got a lot more detail that's into it. And I like that there was some consistency there. Now, the stories as it's told are very fun. They've got some hard-hitting moments. They've actually got some very emotional moments, believe it or not, in the cartoon. The problem with the existing cartoon is it's like they're all ADHD. It's like, I'm here and we're going to get through this one. Like when the Goblin Queen comes back, there is so much involved with that Sinister. They managed to get the changing the Goblin Queen, the whole thing, and resolution in one 22-minute episode.
They did.
No? How about no? The original X-Men wouldn't have did that. It would have been a 3 or 4 episode arc where they would have done great. Okay, on to the next thing. So they've got some good storytelling, but they are literally condensing it way, way, way too much. It's just driving me crazy.
What episode? I don't know the episode number, but it started off. The first part of the episode dealt with Jubilee and Sunspot and Mojo, right? And Motendo.
Oh yeah, it's the Mojo world. Love Mojo.
Right, and I know all about Mojo and stuff because I mean, look, I've read the comics and whatnot. But then, and I'll be honest, that just bored the hell out of me, so I fast forwarded it. But my point is, in the middle of the episode, or 2/3 through, they pick up and they go, okay, now we're doing Life and Death with Storm and Forge. And I'm like, you're not starting this with a brand new episode?
Right.
It's that Life and Death Part 1. And I'm like, but what? Why wouldn't you do that part 1 as a whole episode?
Life and Death are iconic storytelling in the comics. That alone should have been just a standalone episode to get through that.
I know.
And Mojo, again, they cram so much into Mojo. Oh, where's my favorite character out of all that's Longshot. Longshot with Adams doing the art. I love Longshot. And there's a doll out of him. You can see the little star on his eye. And okay, we get Spiral. And way too quick. You just blew through Mojo. That is the problem with 97. Yeah. They are hitting good storylines, but they're blowing through them way too quick to make it effective.
100%. That is one of the major issues I have with it is way too fast paced. They had such good material to work with, and because they're blowing through it at flash pace, it's like how I feel like, yes, as a comic book reader and somebody who knows, what they're trying to do with the story and the direction they're going in, I can understand that maybe an average audience individual who isn't so experienced in it, they wanted to go faster to try to make it appeal to them. So like if they didn't like something, they can keep watching and it's not going to hang on it forever. But that severely has hurt it because it's too fast paced. I am going to disagree. I think the art is inferior to the art of the original, and the controversies surrounding it definitely, I think, were a turnoff for a lot of people. All of the, the way they were marketing it with Morph being non-binary, and some of the relationship dynamics were going to be modern, and I feel like that hurt it so much because for what it is not bad. It's not perfect, but it's not bad. But there's so many people now who will not touch it with a 10-foot pole because they heard, oh, non-binary, modern, we're changing things. Instant turn off for most people, or at least a lot of people, and it's so sad.
Well, somebody in the chat said they're doing they say what I don't like about the 97 series is they're treating it like it's 2024. And that's true with the whole non-binary thing. That's 1997. That wasn't a thing. And by the way, if you don't have this book is fantastic.
Yeah.
So it's all about the original.
I don't have that book. Oh, now I got to take to eBay. Now I got to go online.
So freaking good. And I do. This has all the original character sketches from the first series. And it is just fantastic, gorgeous stuff. But I agree. I think, how many episodes is this supposed to be? This 97.
I don't know because it only goes out. It didn't. When I last looked, it didn't have a complete listing of them. It only had out like a couple beyond where they were.
It says 7.
That's what's out.
Okay.
Or out.
I was gonna. Episode 7 ending. Oh, that set the stage for the 3-part season 1 finale. So doesn't that mean 10? Why word it that way? 3-part season finale. Yeah. What?
Yeah, so 10 episodes because I know they're working on 2. Well, the show suffered from the issue with the showrunner who was from Witcher, who wound up having some online difficulties apparently and got removed. And he was what I think at least got them to keep to good story arcs at least and got them interested in doing it. Like I said, they are just going. They have developed this show for your TikTok audience instead of your X-Men audience.
The thing, if they're going to do every episode, say, is like something different, then it's kind of like, okay, then you need to pick single issue stories and do those, right?
Right.
But another way that would have been nice is if it's 10 episodes, pick 3 great storylines that span multiple issues and give them like 3 episodes each, and then the one could have 4 episodes.
Yeah, totally.
Not say do Death of Phoenix, but just as an example, Death of Phoenix, great. Give that 4 episodes. Give it room to breathe and build up. So when that big moment happens, for people that are just like tuning in and watching it, they'll be like, whoa.
And they did in the first series, the animated series. That's exactly what they did. The Life and Death, like I really want to walk right over right now just because I was kind of disappointed by it. Go pull out my comic drawer. Go pull out, I think it's 186 is where it starts. I want to pull up my X-Men 186 and then go right down through it and then just go read the story because they literally skipped. And I know they changed a little bit and that's okay for TV, but they skipped over so much of it. And with the adversary and all of that, I actually want to go back and reread it because it was such a good storyline.
Well, a major problem is Bo DiMaio. So he was the showrunner, and they
Yeah.
actually fired him like 3 days before premiere. But he is the one who said that they wanted to represent certain people and that they wanted to, push all of these narratives into it. And I feel like
Oh
if he
yeah.
wasn't
Okay.
hired, he's not the only person that was, I'll just use the word problematic, that was part of this, I'm sure, judging by the fact that of how expansive, the amount of executives and producers and writers you end up having on a project. But he is someone who went into the interviews and said, oh, well, we decided to go in this new contemporary direction. And, well, obviously they fired him. And we don't know if it was because they knew that there was going to be backlash or because he was doing porn. But regardless, I think was one of the major problems with this series. And it's sad because, again, I do think what they had to work with was obviously really solid. They just needed people who knew and understood and could respect the content that came before and that it was based on.
Right. And what I didn't understand with him was correct me if I'm wrong in the chat, but he was the one in The Witcher because Henry Cavill wanted out because they were walking away from all the original true material, and he was a fan of it. He was the writer who stood up, Bo DiMaio, against all of the other people in there and said, no, we need to use the existing material, and they got rid of him. So I was expecting when he went to the X-Men project, he also liked the X-Men a lot. And I'm like, he's going to stand up for the rights and good storytelling.
Yep, he was a former producer who had claimed that some writers actively disliked the books and the games, which of course pissed people off because we see what they've done with The Witcher now, and they lost Cavill, and it's so awful. Fucking sad. But yeah, I mean, he was a former producer. Now, he was only a producer on season 1, but regardless, I think that was maybe a reason why he got this job, because he sounded like he was a passionate fan of things. And, well, yeah, he's passionate, all right. Passionate about getting fired.
Yeah. Well, maybe it was the OnlyFans thing that got him canned. But, there was that meme going around because, you're right. If they wouldn't have said anything about being non-binary, because morph is morph. Yep. Why even classify?
Right. You don't need to put a label on it. Just don't put a label on it. Do your storytelling and leave it.
And then you've got Apocalypse. They had his ass was nice and round, and then they showed Rogue, and it's like where's Rogue? She's my second favorite character in the Marvel universe is Rogue.
How could they do this to
Rogue? And I'm just like, seriously, you turned the second hottest, my favorite character, and you did that to her.
Maybe I'm a little biased, but Jean Grey's kind of my gal, if I'm a little biased.
It's Genesis too.
Oh my god.
Oh boy, are we gonna have some fun here?
She's one of my favorites. But guys, we are going to be wrapping up stream relatively soon. So I have a couple more questions, obviously about Kor-Drath, but for independent creators, what do you think is the path to make the mainstream obsolete? Now, obviously, the mainstream is killing itself, but do you think that there is something that could definitely help the indie scene, whether it's collaborations and crossovers? Do you think it's simply putting out tons of product or high quality product? This is a question that I know a couple of people asked me to ask you guys.
I will say, the best thing that the fans can do, because there's a reason why. Do what I did. I canceled all my Marvel and DC. I'm just not giving them my money anymore. I'm not going to go see their movies anymore. I'm done. Same thing with Star Wars. Star Trek's my favorite sci-fi. Star Wars was my second, and I'm just not going to give them money. But what I am doing is I am finding great independent, and it's Kickstarter, Indiegogo, like what we're doing. There's a reason we're doing it. There are a lot of great creators that are out there right now that are putting out fantastic stuff. We had Mike Byrne and Kelsey Shannon on our show today. It was great. Their product, they're putting out another Nexus book. Scourge looks fantastic. It harkens back to the 80s where I was in love with that type of stuff. I will support that. I already did. I'm crowdfunding it. And that's what we all need to do. We need to come together and support each other on all these crowdfundings. And as long as you're supporting people who give a damn about what they're putting out and believe in putting out a high quality product, that's what we are attempting to do. That's what we're going to support by people coming on our channel and us purchasing their books.
Yeah, I think that's great.
Yeah, I mean, he summed it up. Just independent stuff is definitely, I think, where it's going these days. Crowdfunding, obviously, we like to tell people, you know, when they're backing the product, you're producers of it. Just like there's producers of a movie. Whoever backs this book, it's helping us produce the book. You are the producers. And the nice thing is, unlike regular, you know, mainstream stuff, the better the book does, crowdfunding wise, the more stuff everybody gets.
Yeah,
because that's part of it too. It's the stretch goals and things like that, and you want to, you know, put thought into those. For us, because we're incorporating the gaming module as well. It's the 7x10. You know, it's basically a nice art print on the front, but on the back, they're playable characters. Dennis did the stats on all the stuff. So I think, you know, the best thing to do is it's not that hard to break away from them. And honestly, if you still have that itch for the classic characters, okay, get the back issue stuff. That's what I do. Yeah. I mean, there's so much content out there. Like I said, I've been collecting since 83, and I still run across stuff that it's like, oh my God, I've never seen this before or read this story before. And do that. So
yeah, awesome. And I also see another question. What would Andy and Dennis suggest could be done to get kids into comic books over manga? Thank you, Tony, for the 5.
Oh, yeah. Well, I mean, when it comes to kids, it's more about the parents because, you know, if you're talking kids, we'll take that as, say, you know, 14 and younger, or say 15. Because they're not mobile. You know what I mean? You're not going somewhere by yourself. Your parents have to take you. So for me, my daughter does read comics. She doesn't read manga, but it's because I was going to the comic shop every week. And now she goes with me, you know, and gets stuff. It just comes down to the parents pointing them in that direction, really. And really just pushing reading and stuff. I mean, it sounds really old school. I remember reading is fundamental, but you know, it is. And,
but see, and you know, there's a marriage out there between the two. One of the things on our campaign, I don't know if you can scroll or not, one of the things that we did when we finished Kor-Drath The Reckoning, one of the feedbacks, because we love listening to our audience said, we love this book.
Yeah.
However, because of the nude scene and stuff like that, we can't take it to school. We can't show our kids. So one of the things that we did was we took that to heart. And my daughter is a teacher. And I said, all right. I showed her the book. She read through it. And she goes, oh, yeah, we can't have this in school.
Right.
So we turned around and made a manga edition, and we made a digest edition for kids that's E for everyone, where they can take it and the teachers could look through it and they were like, oh yeah, we can let this in school. There they are. There's the manga, and then there's the color, E for everyone. So you know what, I
think that's fan-fucking-tastic. I think that is such a good direction to go in.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you. And nobody's out there doing that. And, you know, we want it to appeal. There's some, you know, spicy material once in a while in there, but there's nothing that says we can't make a kid-friendly version
Right.
of it.
Yeah. And I
Right.
think that is such a good idea, because obviously kids are going to eventually become adults, and then they will already be familiarized with the Kor-Drath name. And then they, as they grow older, could go, oh, wow, there's an adult version of this that I can now read and experience. And I've already been a fan for a bunch of years.
Yeah, I see Leon saying Kor-Drath plushies. Well,
yeah, where's the body pillows? Okay, Adriana, body pillows when?
Right? Okay, that was brought up. That was a suggestion, by the way.
I'll put one right here. Free marketing.
One of the things that the other guys did, because I'm putting out another game module, the Demise and Dracomort. And so we're going to have a second module, gaming module with it. And they were like, dude, we love that. What about designing figures for role playing?
Yeah.
So this is what we did. And we've got the 2-inch. So those of you that play Dungeons and Dragons or use any other miniatures, we've got it to the 25 millimeter scale for you. There's the 3-inch for somebody wanted it bigger. And then we've got a full 5-inch. Because people were like, I would like a statue. Well, this is
people are such size queens these days, guys.
Right? It's all about the size. Well, it's going to be hard to show, but the detail, this is Andy did sketch for it, and we had a professional sculpt this, and it is literally based right off of Andy's drawings. So it doesn't kind of look like Kor-Drath. It looks like Kor-Drath.
It is,
this is
right.
Our first one right now that it's our prototypes, and they turned out fantastic. So you guys had asked for it. So we're listening and doing it. I've got on my X/Twitter, I did put up a poll. So you guys can always run out there and bid. You can put on there, who do you want to see for the second one? Adriana, Lilith, the Necronite on Hellfire, his fiery steed. You guys let us know who's next.
That's awesome. I love that. And so, let's shill. Guys, you need to shill for Kor-Drath the Awakening. As we wrap up this stream, here is your time to talk and tell us more. Tell anybody and convince the chat. I know we already have a few people in chat who have supported, but
can you play the trailer?
I can for sure. Yeah, the audio should work. Oh my god, you're so loud. I think chat should be able to hear it. Guys, let me know.
No sound.
No sounds.
No.
You can. How to make this work? I don't know. It says that there's sound playing. There's not?
Well, you might be able to hear it. Just unshare it. And then when you reshare, if you're doing the entire screen, just make sure to click.
Okay.
I did that today.
Add audio.
Let me present. What's it? Why does it have to act this way? Why does it always have to?
I know. When they updated
when you need
StreamYard, they updated StreamYard with how you share the screen and stuff, and it was like, oh my god, now I got to do this and that.
Yeah, when you share it,
it says also share tab audio. Yeah, it's clicked. What the heck? Work.
Try again.
Stop being okay. All right, this might work. Hopefully.
There it is.
Cool. Awesome. I got a little scared there.
Well, that's it.
It looks so good.
Thank you. Yeah, the guy that did the trailer just did a great job. But I mean, we can show why it's playing because it's just music anyhow. There's no talking. So, Kor-Drath the Awakening is for people that like high fantasy adventure. There's lots of action. Never really a dull moment in the book. Dennis does a great job of keeping the story moving. And in this one, the quest continues. We introduce Vordoom the Undying. In the last one, he plays a much bigger role in this one. And, the stakes are higher. Adriana's tribe is, I guess you could say her tribe is on the chopping block, and they have to do whatever it takes to save it because there's these artifacts that he's after. And it's kind of like a race in a way to see who's going to get him first. And Kor-Drath has to grow into being the hero that he's going to become as well. So it is the hero's journey too.
Yeah.
There you go. It's excitement.
Yeah.
It's fantastic art, if I do say so myself. I mean, Dennis tells me that at least. So
I think it's fantastic, in my humble opinion. But I also am a fantasy nerd, so I'm gonna like anything fantasy.
I've known Andy for years. This is some of his best artwork I think he's ever done.
And you know, there is a lot of story crammed into it, and not in a bad way.
Right.
You know,
right.
The first book. A lot of the comments we got from the first book was just how much story there was.
Yeah.
I guess I could say, you know, Dennis, take this as a compliment. It is kind of like, you can definitely tell he was a fan of Chris Claremont's X-Men from the standpoint of the amount of story in it compared to, you know, if you take one page out of Chris Claremont's X-Men from back in the day.
Yeah.
And if in a modern comic, they would take that one page and stretch it out over 3. And I'm not even joking.
Yeah.
Right.
You know? And this book is the exact opposite of that, which I like as well, because that's the stuff I grew up on, you know, reading too.
Right.
The thing is,
every now and then, go ahead.
Yeah. There's so much so it's a new IP. So you as the readers, you don't have anything to fall back on, you know? So, you know, even that first page, it's a whole page of like scrolling text. And think of it like Conan the Barbarian or any of those great ones, even Star Wars. You just can't jump into it and try and get anything out there. You had to explain what happened in the past to bring you to what's going on now.
Exactly.
And the feedback, you know, and that's not the Marvel way of doing things. The Marvel way is you jump in right away with action. You got this splash page. They're fighting and they're doing stuff and you need to go through it. That's not going to work for this. So that was one of the things when we were going into it. Which way do we go with this? Lo and behold, we were like, no, we really got to tell this. The feedback guys, that first page and a half was fantastic because we understood what was going on in the book, and it was a great setup.
It's a very careful balance, especially with comics, because in full-length novels, you could take the 5-page route to explain one or two things. I love Robert Jordan, don't get me wrong, but you know, sometimes the descriptions were a little much. But in comics, you don't unfortunately have that luxury because you only have so many pages to work with. You have the artwork that you're working around. It's so much more complex, I'd say.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I mean that's the hard part, is getting that story told to make sense without skipping over vital pieces. And, you know, and I know a lot of the comic book, you know, writers today, and when you pull them off, you look at a Marvel and DC, there's not a lot of writing. It's just more action, and the writing isn't always coherent, or there's so many plot holes in it that you can just shake a stick. So you need to be able to plug all of that up and put together a nice coherent. So it's going to have more words than a regular one. So if you're looking for a pop-up picture book, this isn't it. Although the artwork's a lot of it, and it's fantastic, especially like that 2-page battle scene that we had. Oh, everybody loved that.
Yeah, that's awesome. But guys, if you have anything else to say in your outros, feel free. Reintroduce yourselves, shill, Kor-Drath, as much as you want.
Just go, you know, follow, for me, Andy Smith Art on Twitter, or X, Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube channels, Andy Smith. I think it's Andy Smith Comic Book Artist. I pop up every Tuesday, 8 a.m. as a book look, where basically I pull a book off my bookshelf. I put it down on the table with the camera facing right down on it. And I literally go through every page of the book. And I'm not talking graphic novels and comics. I've got a lot lot of how to draw books, a lot of books on biographies, visual biographies about artists and creators and stuff. And I go through the book. And if the book is still available, I post a link so you can go buy it. And then every Thursday, 8 a.m., I pop a time-lapse drawing of whatever character I felt like doing a few days previous. And it's time-lapse because it's just meant for quick 2 minutes to see from beginning to final of the character for whoever it was. So like this Thursday, it's Wonder Man from Marvel in one of his classic costumes from the 70s. And Dennis and I do the DNA show, Dennis and Andy show, every Wednesday, 3 p.m. And every Friday, we drop a movie review because every Thursday we go check out a movie and pop it Friday morning, first thing for everybody.
Yep. That's exciting.
Yep. And for me, on X or Twitter, I'm at Dinja's Comics. It's a Dinja with a D. Think of Ninjas Comics, but with a D instead of an N. And then on YouTube, I've got it right there under my name. I'm at Dennis Turner. And check up on it. We put out lots. I put out quick flips, full reviews of comics. The old book and records from like the 70s, I'm doing full playthroughs of those. I just did a Spider-Man one this morning. I do Star Trek Starships. I do shorts. There's a lot of material out there, and we do our comic calls because we do a lot of conventions and we love doing that. The chat loves it. They come in to see what we picked up and we bicker about. So it's always a great time, but we've got lots of content. You can check us out, subscribe if you haven't, and definitely Kor-Drath The Awakening. We'd love to earn your guys, producer credits on there by backing The Awakening.
That's right. You can pick up the first volume as well as an add-on. So,
yep.
Awesome. Well, chat, all of the links are in the description to websites and YouTubes and social media, and of course the Indiegogo page. So definitely go and check them out. But chat, I will not be live tomorrow like usual because I will be live Friday, Saturday, Sunday. We've got Stellar Blades release. But yeah, chat, thank you all so much for being here the past few hours. Guys, it was great to talk with you.
Thank you.
Yeah, chat. That is the end of stream. So thank you for being here. Thank you for your donations, your support, for stopping by, and have a very good rest of your, I almost said Thursday because I never stream on Wednesdays. So Wednesday. Bye, chat.
Bye-bye, everybody.
Bye. Live long and prosper.
Gang signs.